Oh, hi, it's Anne. I'm your personal freedom coach, and I am so delighted today to bring this fantastic guest, Phil Escott, the favorite man in my life, uh, because he helped me so much when I came out of my heart operation. And really, he is the only person who helped me so much. And I'm so grateful. I don't know what I would have done without him, but to be sure, it wouldn't have been so easy. So I asked Phil to come today because I would like to talk about emotions. I think emotions is something that I had no idea how to handle. I still think today that if I had done all the breathing work and all that I did with HeartMath, that told me how to be in control of my emotions. I still think if I had known that years before, I would have never had to have a heart operation. But I can't be sure. Anyway, so now that I've vaguely introduced Phil, I'm going to let Phil introduce himself because he's a fantastic guy. And if you got any problems, I think you should really get in contact with him because it's going to change your life. So, Phil, please, could you let us know what you're doing?
Oh, Anne, you're too kind. Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure to help you, and you've helped me. You have such a great sense of humor, and it's always so amusing chatting to you. And we've had a lot of private chats as well. So yeah, it's a pleasure to come on. Thank you. Um, so who am I? Well, it's funny because I've sort of become known as this sort of autoimmunity and carnivore guy online. But most of my life, I was sort of a spiritual seeker, if you like, which kind of ended at one point in 2006, where I had a big shift in consciousness. I just had sorry to plug this early, but philescott.substack.com. I just did an article about it, actually, about that and how it relates to our health. It's not all about diet. People normally come to me when, they've been damaged by a regular diet or veganism, even worse, or something like that. And as I was, and ended up really crippled with psoriatic arthritis back in 2010. And after thinking I was a great expert on all things diet and lifestyle, and writing books on like plant-based eating and stuff, well, at least part of that with books on Ayurveda and things, it was it was a big wake-up call for me, and I had to turn everything around that I thought I knew. And so, it's kind of odd where I've ended up as sort of a 30-year vegetarian, or at least I call it plant-based, really, because I was still eating other things in the meantime, with long periods of vegginess and shorter periods of veganness. But it was still pretty much plant-based. Because most people's diet is, it's sort of 70 or 80 or 90 even percent plants, even if they eat some meat with it. So, never did I think I would become, for the last 9 years, a fully carnivore and not eating any veg or anything like that. And it's been miraculous and great results I see with me and clients who I work with, and autoimmune reversal. But everything comes from the subtle to the gross, doesn't it? And so, coming from that whole sort of spiritual side, I've been much more aware of, working with stuff like that, past traumas, with emotions, with that kind of thing. And excuse me, it's a very powerful part of the healing. We were talking just before we came on about, basically what Bruce Lipton calls the biology of belief, right? And so you can believe yourself into illness, and you can believe yourself out of it. And I think one of apart from a lot of things that I really helped myself with and unwound, both emotionally and then consequently in the physical, with EFT and Byron Katie and, you know, other kind of works like that. Helped by my wonderful friend, Maidi Goodson, who is going to be on my Red Pill Buddhas podcast soon. I've been dying to get her on. She's a fascinating healer. But one episode, I think, was very interesting, which was when I'd been looking after my mother for 10 years or so, from 2003 when my father died until 2013. And we were in one big house together, you know, we had different floors and whatever, but I got to look after her for that time. And she was very difficult, you know, she was, I mean, you know, great. And I loved her very much and all that, but we didn't get on very well character wise. And, you know, we ended up at over 90 years old, so 93 years old, reversing her bronchiectasis, all sorts of digestive issues, even her breast cancer. But I think,
may I say, parenthèse, for the breast cancer, that after I came out of the operation and I was working with you, I realized, well, I didn't, on my right breast was getting very hard, and I had cysts all over. And because what you did with your mom, I painted some iodine on it for about 6 weeks, and it all went away. And that, yet again, thanks to you.
yeah, well, it's an old trick, isn't it? I got it off Jack Kruse, where he was talking about painting the breasts with iodine for fibrocystic breast syndrome and whatever. And in fact, I think there's an article on it written by my friend Amadali, who's a great musician and whatever. And she wrote a little article on that about how she'd fixed hers like that on my website somewhere from ages ago. But anyway, yeah, with my mum, I mean, I think a lot of her issues were very emotional. She was very closed emotionally. But it was also affecting me a lot. And when we moved from that house in 2013 to this one, and I put her in a smaller house and a flat, you know, an apartment or whatever, I said, I just can't do it anymore. You know, I'll still look after you, but I need to be able to get away. I don't need this crushing disapproval, you know, all day long, like everything, you've done this, oh, you've done that, you've done, you know, all that sort of thing. She was very much like that. And at the time, I had a lot of inflammation in the joints all over. And when we moved in here, my ankles completely cleared up, which were the worst part of my body. Some days I could hardly walk with them. It was like having broken glass in them. It was agony. And with no change in diet or anything else, when we got in here, my ankles completely cleared up within a couple of weeks and never to come back. And I remember looking up the influence of that. This was while other joints were still kicking off, you know, and the ankles have never, ever done anything in the last 11 years since then. Even if I have had an issue in another joint or whatever, the process just doesn't seem to go into them. And I looked up the influence, and it was quite amazing. It was, if there's something wrong with the ankles, look for something you're trying not to run away from. And I thought that was fascinating. And I was, because I was trying to hold on there as long as I could. And this is how I believe, in a way, you know, gut integrity and how it gets ruined by eating lots of grains, seed oils, plants, that kind of thing. Then it goes through into the body. But why does it happen in the ankle and not the knee, or vice versa? Why does it happen in the elbow and not the hand? You know, a rheumatologist will never tell you that, but the emotional component to it, if you look up, you know, on consults, if somebody's got a problem with a particular part of the body, I'll look in like Louise Hay's book, or Ina Seagal's The Secret Language of Your Body, and you can see the different parts of the body and how they relate to emotions. And it's almost like a good gut integrity protects us against our emotions. I've never heard anybody kind of think of it like that before, but that's how it feels to me. That, you know, it's a blessing, like the book that I wrote, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, because it woke me up to so many other things. And, you know, periods of illness are often periods of great blessing and growth to people. And if you can see everything on all levels, and address it on all levels, not just, oh, I need to take a pill, or I need to take a herb, or I need to change my diet. So, you know, well, apart from pills and herbs, I'm not really so much into them, but, you know, changing the diet's very powerful, changing your lifestyle, but also looking into the emotional side of things, very important.
I think it is very important. I remember buying your book, and it took me a year to get really interested in the last chapters, and the last chapters being all about the emotions and all the, you know, all related to emotions. I think people can be so sick, become so sick, just because, of course, because of what they eat, and changing what they eat is a very good thing, but really because they do not know how to deal with their emotions. I never knew how to deal with my emotions. It was so bad. By the time I got to 12 years old, my mother was taking sleeping pills and all that. I swallowed a whole bottle, not because I wanted to die, but I wanted her to love me. And, you know, waste of time. If people are not going to go, they're not so inclined, it's not going to happen. But who teaches you how to deal with all those things when you're a kid? And then as you grow up, like it never happens, unless we find out for ourselves, how does it work? I don't know. I
Well,
don't think it does.
yeah, it's not the sort of thing you'd ever get taught in school, is it? You're not taught very, very useful things at all in school. You know, you're not taught about money management and self-sufficiency and actual real diet and the sort of deceptions of the elites and whatever. The program is all created by those people. So unless you're lucky enough to have, you know, family, parents or whatever who are aware of those kind of things, but it's very it's very difficult, I think, sometimes for kids to work on something like that because they don't have so much past. You know, they're not directly relating it to sort of trauma from emotions, because those emotions are probably being or those traumas are being seeded in there at the time. And so, you know, all we can do as parents, I think, at that stage is to understand the traumas that we and other people have gone through and try not to subject our kids to those traumas. And then if we fail and they do have some traumas, maybe lead them towards some ways of unwinding them later on, which there are many ways. But yeah. You're
There,
muted.
actually.
Yeah.
What I like with HeartMath is that they do program for kids,
Oh,
because they think if they get into school and they are bullied or anything like that, which happens at a very young age, just the teaching of the breathing is sort them out completely, because it just gives them a blank canvas. It stops them reacting to what's happening to them, which we all do. And once you are in your neutral place and you got a blank canvas, you can then see the situation that will not be tainted by the emotion. And then you can see it in a much more positive way for yourself. And they had amazing results with kids. Just to pass it on. I love that so much. It saved my life. That I'm a proponent of. I don't understand why people can't make the effort, but that's only me.
No, that's brilliant. If there are sort of ways of structuring it with kids, that's great, because it's the same with adults, really, in a way, isn't it? That, you know, that old saying, be here now, and it's trotted out, nobody really understands what it means. But on the level of trauma and worry, I mean, I remember the days back in sort of 1979 to 82 or so. I was pretty much schizophrenic. I damaged myself with so much tripping on LSD and psilocybin mushrooms, enormous doses in too short a time, that I ended up just, you know, as a psychotic, really, sort of drug-induced psychosis, wake up in the morning And I'd think, oh, I'm kind of okay. Oh, yes, good. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, there's the fear. And then there would be like a cycle of fear. You know, it wasn't even a fear of anything in particular. It was just, oh my God, I'm going mad. Oh yes, I'm going nuts. And then and the whole day would go with those sort of panic attacks and sort of mild flashbacks to the acid trips. But that is kind of a magnifying glass on what happens to people mostly. It took me a long time to get out of that. I got out of it in stages, really, with meditation, with tapping, with sort of letting go, with healing the gut as well. Probably took 30 years to really stabilize it. I mean, there was one point where you were a pilot, right? But I used to be so terrified of airplanes, I didn't go on an airplane from like 1980 until 1996, I think, because I was just too frightened. And then when I did go on one, the terror. And now I just did some tapping and tapped all that out. And now I can sleep. I mean, last time I went to Thailand, I think I slept pretty much from London to Bangkok. I didn't give a damn about it, you know? And you can really reprogram the brain and leave yourself also sitting with those things for a long time. Now, I heard somebody explain it really nicely the other day on a podcast, and it was when we start freaking out about something, there is a moment where we do freak out, you know, whether it's a worry of money or past trauma, whatever hits us. But then that's normal. But then the constant chronic worry about it that carries on after that is not normal. And so we end up going, oh God, I'm worried about money. Oh, now I'm worried that I'm going to be worried about money all day. Oh, yes, and this might happen and that might happen. Instead of that, okay, you get a hit of being worried about money. Great. And as you say, breathing, you know, just say, okay, that's where it ends. I can consider that without the panic from now on. And that's a beautiful skill to have. And we all get caught in it now and again. You know, that 3 a.m. time when you wake up and your head's churning over about something you're worried about, and it can go on for half an hour before you go, oh, hang on a minute, just breathe, just meditate, whatever. You know, my son Tom is here, who lives in Thailand now, and it's really sad. He's been here for a month and he's going home tomorrow, so I'm going to miss him loads because he's amazing to have around. I have, you know, 2 younger kids at the moment of 9 and 15, and Tom's 34 from my marriage ages ago, and he's really getting into this breathwork thing, you know, and took us on this breathwork journey of our ancestors and whatever. And it is so powerful. It's just like sort of 2.5 hours or whatever. Detta was there, my missus, and we all did this breathwork thing together. And it is just incredibly powerful, you know, what can be done with the breath. It's interesting, actually, because we've got that Spanish thing coming up, and there'll be Natasha Campbell McBride and Sophia Clements, Anthony Chafee there in October in Spain. And Tom will either be there or he'll hook up on Zoom and do a breathwork thing. I'd love to see what effect it'll have on them if I can persuade them to come and have a go at it, you know, and stop talking about meat for a couple of minutes. But yeah, very, very powerful. Those breathing techniques for sure. Yeah.
What is really special about the heart one is that you have to go through the heart. You know that we got a brain in the heart, and it got a frequency that is 10 times as big as what we have in the brain. And the reality is, if we ask our heart for an answer, when we have a problem, it stops all the little monkey mind up there, because we have so many stories, so many beliefs. Some don't even go with each other. So it's just like a battle in the brain that goes on with and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is we're getting nowhere. So that has to be shut down. And then by imagining you breathe through the heart, then that shut down completely. And from there, whatever problem you have, the first thing we do is that we acknowledge how we feel mentally, physically, because very often it can feel somewhere in the body, and emotionally. And then keep doing the breathing, bring a positive emotion an easy emotion that you will get to find just like that, because it's something you can remember all the time. You never had a bad experience there. And then you ask your heart, and within 20 minutes, 20 seconds, just the cat's making a mess next. Sorry. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a, petit chat? Oh, you are a terror. You just get an answer. It is amazing. And it doesn't mean that the first time you do it, you're going to get an answer for everything. But it's like a muscle that the more we do it, and the easier it gets. And I mean, to me, it's fabulous. But HeartMath, I got to say, well, I'm talking a lot about them because they saved my life. They saved my life to the extent that when I had to go for my open heart operation, I was as cool as a cucumber thanks to the breathing. And when I got with the anesthetist, he couldn't find my vein. I ended up taking his hand and the hand of his assistant, doing the breathing together, because I could feel how stressed he was for not finding the vein after 10 minutes. And after we did that breathing, the needle went in, and then don't ask me because I was long gone. But to be able to do that, I can't think of anything else. But that's me.
Yeah, well, the heart is so important, and it is much more than we think it is. It's funny how cardiologists think that it's just a pump, but then again, is it a pump at all? When at our last event that Ben and I put on in the Peak District, the War on Health, and we had the amazing Dr. Sarah Pugh speaking, and she's become a good friend. She's absolutely wonderful, but she gave a talk on how the heart wasn't a pump. And it's what is there, 23,000 kilometers of capillaries or something in our body, and a pump that size could not push the blood around all of them, and sometimes the capillaries are smaller than the actual cells, the red blood cells, white blood cells, whatever. How can they get them through? So her explanation, it was wonderful, that it's a sort of a vortex and a sort of toroidal field, and the energy of it goes out a long way, and it's very different to what we've been taught. The energetic power of the heart. It's I wish I could get her to talk about that and put it up somewhere. I have to do another episode with her or whatever and go into the heart. But it was beautiful because she's not only disproving the fact that it's a pump on a physical level, but also going into the whole energetic and spiritual side of the heart, and techniques that bring that in and put the awareness on the heart are very, very important. It's because people think the brain is the seat of consciousness, and I'm not in the least bit convinced of that. It's only, I think, people think it is because our eyes are up there. And so we think, oh, right, the thoughts are in our head and whatever. But if we actually looked at where consciousness was, because, even the finest neurosurgeon in the world has no idea how the brain works, really. They just kind of dig around in there and, they get the odd tumor out. They do some good and all kinds of stuff. But nobody really knows what's going on. To me, I think that the brain and the heart and other parts of the body are receivers of the whole sort of collective consciousness around us. And you can tell this when you're involved in something artistic. I mean, you're a singer and musician, and you've created some great stuff. If you have that kind of artistic mind, I mean, I know when I play drums and it's a crappy gig. There's one guy in the corner with his fingers in his ears trying to look at the football on the screen, and you're playing and you've been booked there, and it's never a good gig. But like one that we had a little while ago at the festival that Darren put on, Daz from the Daz band, who runs the Light Paper and whatever, and I'm in his band and play drums in it. And he put on this festival, and it was the Weekend Truth Festival. No, that was the one before that we played at. He put in Stand in the Light, and it was pretty much a music festival rather than having speakers as well. But the audience was so on our side and so into the whole thing of you know, awakening of consciousness and what's happening in the world. The feeling then when you play, the music plays itself. I don't think I've ever had such an easy gig as the last one we did at that festival. It just played itself. It was beautiful. I was looking at things where I thought, am I going to remember that bit? I don't need to. I just need to let go. Something else is doing this. And I think this is what you can see through music, and how often musicians are really quite spiritual, because they can feel this process of what they call being in the zone, if you like, or you know, that point where everything comes through you and you think, well, that wasn't me, you know, that wasn't the small me. That, you know, sometimes I'll play something on the drums and so one of the band members will turn around and go, whoa, what was that, you know? And I say, I don't know what it was, you know. And I get that. That's why I love, my favorite part of music, I think, is sitting back and just playing something reasonably simple while the guitarist goes crazy. Those are always my favorite bits, you know, guitar solos with people who are monster players. And again, at that festival, you know, Suraj, the guitarist, he played such incredible stuff. People were just really applauding after his solos like they do in jazz gigs, you know. It was absolutely wonderful. And yeah, that is where, you know, all this comes through. All the consciousness can come right through you. And yeah, I believe that the brain, if it's anything, it's a receiver. It's not the seat of consciousness at all.
Do you know what Lynn McTaggart say, and Joe Dispenza, is that in fact, whatever we feel, whatever we think, and whatever we say, the words are very important. We are broadcasting to the to the whole world, and anyway, at least 10 feet away from ourselves. So we are a constant broadcast. And so therefore, if we're in alignment with our heart, then even if people are very agitated around, they might come down just because we are in a zone. Having said that, we catch their frequency as well. I think all that is so fascinating, but nobody talks much about it. I think you're probably the first person I speak to that have an inkling and rather know about it, because when you look at other people, do they have a clue? Are they even interested? I don't know.
Well, you know, there's pretty much everything that goes on in the world at the moment is designed to take us away from that ancestral heritage. And I think, you know, even in spirituality and religion, most of the things in there and the overcomplications are pretty much designed to keep us away from realizing our true nature. You know, enlightenment, for example, is given us this sort of carrot on a stick that you can never catch up with. You know, some guy in the Himalayas in a loincloth or whatever has made it, but you're never going to. But you should meditate all the time and give us loads of money, because one day in the future, maybe you might get there, but it's unlikely. And then even if you do have some kind of awakening, people get actually really quite hostile towards you. And they say, no, you can't have had one. You're just some idiot, you know, particularly close friends and people in the same spiritual movement as you. I've noticed that, you know, my experiences within the transcendental meditation movement. And if people have awakenings, they're almost ostracized. Like, oh, no, it can't be him. Oh, no. Yeah, and not realizing that if they have an awakening like that themselves, they're going to get the same treatment. You know, it's like when vegans give up veganism and they get really attacked, and they don't realize that when their health fails and they give up, they're going to get attacked as well. So oh, you were never vegan, you didn't do it properly, you would all those kind of things, because a vegan is a vegan for life. And it's the same in the spiritual thing, because the spiritual thing also pushes veganism and vegetarianism, and all of this is covering up the little tiny bits of truths in these things. Like in the diet world, it's very, very simple, but it takes years often to uncover the layers of the onion of deception. And it's the same in spirituality. You know, the core thing of it is wonderful. And it was such a relief to me in 2006 when I had what I would call an awakening, but it's a very subtle thing. But I had to remember, I had to sit down on that wall in the garden, and I was out there, and I just thought, there it is, there's everything. And it was at the moment, it happened at the moment where I let go of being a yogi that I thought I was. You know, I'm not going to go into the dome anymore, which is the place where they will go and meditate and do their hopping around, their yogic flying and whatever. And, I thought, I'm letting go of it, because I was really into it, did it for years. And then one day I was just feeling I don't really want to do it anymore. And I moved back onto the dome site with my mum, and whatever. Well, after my dad died. And I thought, oh, great, I can get into the dome again. I can carry on doing all the meditation and the Siddhi program and all of that, I just didn't want to. And I felt guilty about it. Like somebody, a Catholic who doesn't really believe in God anymore or want to go to church or something. And I felt guilt. And it was at that moment I let it go that all the seeking went. And it was the simplicity of that. And everything is really very simple. And I believe now that, this thing of enlightenment, as I wrote in this Substack recently, this business of enlightenment is really our essential nature. They're probably, the tribes out there are in this state, who live in nature, and they don't have this constant chronic worry and panic. They get brought up in nature. They understand how plants work with animals and animals work with humans, and how nature eats everything. There's nobody with a vegan placard saying murderer, in the wild, and yet they're far more connected to nature and animals, and have respect for animals and everything around them than any vegan ever would. And so I think everything is bringing us away from that connection. And I think those people probably in that state, because it's a very subtle state. The difference between a human being who is not awakened and one who is like 1% or less, but it's built up to be this really big thing, the greatest thing that can ever happen to you. In a way it is, but it's so subtle. It's just a return to our essential nature. And when you've got that, even if you are in a state like that, it does help you with everyday life in the way that it's, I think who was it? Was it Ramana Maharshi or Papaji maybe? He was once asked, do you still have the same thoughts as you had before your awakening? And his answer was, yes, I just don't believe them anymore. And I thought that was lovely.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, it's having the awareness of the canvas, if you like, that life's experiences are painted on. It's not that you suddenly become omniscient. You're in perfect emotional balance. You're in perfect physical balance. Often things like that can hit you like a brick afterwards. I had to go through all the emotional stuff. I thought dealing with emotions, I'm a great yogi. Dealing with emotions is for like housewives or something. I was so arrogant. I was, like thinking of people who watch sort of afternoon TV and that kind of, it's so arrogant. And I had to have such a wake-up call that I needed that more than anybody that I know, to really look into the emotions, because the spiritual side also takes you away from it. Oh, I've got a mantra. I meditate. I don't need anything else. I don't need to work with emotions. All I need is this mantra. And it just makes you closed-minded and everything. All of these things have taken us away from our ancestral, natural way of being. Spirituality, diet, lifestyle, money, everything is blocking us from that realization.
When people say, well, do you believe in God? I do believe in something, call it God if you want, and it's here. I do not believe in any religion any longer, because it's all been written by man. That's where I have a problem. So the minute somebody is going to write something, there's going to be something in it for whoever to control those people. Because if God was so good, I remember when I was about 24, I went to church with my mom. I had to walk out. The sermon of the priest was, and if you don't do this, you'll go in hell. And is it a God of love? And if it is a God of love, why does he send people to hell? I couldn't get it. I had to walk out. And ever since, I've wondered, actually, is it possible? Because every religion got the equivalent of hell, purgatory, and heaven. And my question, I have no answer for that, is that what we live here?
Well, yeah, I think hell is exactly what we create ourselves. You know, it was also a good quote from one of those yogis. Well, somebody said, you know, what are demons? And the answer was, well, you know, if you knew exactly where they were and how close they are to you, you'd shit your pants. I thought, you know, what he's talking about is that they're in us, and we create most of them. And I do believe actually that there are such things as entities that attach to you. And so things can go wrong in that way, but sometimes it might be, I think the word is egregore, is it, where, you know, collective consciousness brings a being like that into existence. And it's a sort of energetic being, or whether it's that or just an influence on the collective. It's like you've just got to look at the amount of depression and suicide rates going up and all that during these last 4 years, with all the lunacy that's going on that we won't talk about so it won't get our channels pulled down, but everybody knows what we mean. And the fear mongering, you know, the people who I've consulted with and whatever, it wasn't anymore just, I've got this rheumatoid arthritis, can you help? Or I've got this other autoimmune condition, can you help? It was also, I'm alone. You know, I'm somewhere where people don't understand me. I'm isolated. We're locked down. You know, and all of this is trying to break up that unity consciousness that makes us so powerful. And then when you're isolated, you create the hell, you know, for yourself. And in many other ways of just, you know, looking at things in too much of a panicked way, and you know, our false beliefs, and exactly the way you say, you know, how you look at every single thing that comes up. The old analogy of the two guys in a traffic jam, you know, and they're sitting there, and one guy, he's sitting there and he's chilled out and he's listening to the radio or whatever. The other guy is punching the steering wheel and swearing. It's the same traffic jam. It's all down to our attitude, you know, and I don't think there's anything bad that ever happens to us, because there's something else that comes out of it. Like that guy in the traffic jam who's really happy and chilled out. He might be sitting there thinking, I might have run somebody over on the way home. I might have crashed and died. I might have, you know, you never know. You never know.
You're right, we never know. I love the story of the two guys in the traffic jam because, as you say, it's our attitude that brings it all to ourselves. All we need to do is have a look and change our attitude to it. And as you say, we never know because we take everything for granted. I mean, do I think, am I going to wake up tomorrow? Okay, I'm going to go to Cyprus. So am I telling you, oh, Phil, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to die before I go to Cyprus. Well, maybe so. It's a possibility. I have no idea. You don't know when you're going to die. I don't know when I'm going to die. And then I got another question in my mind, which is, everybody thinks that when we're born, it's so wonderful. And when we die, it's so terrible. Well, how do we know? Could it be the other way around? I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, there are people, many people who think that this is a hell planet. This is like a punishment planet, or, oh, well, is it even a planet? There we go. Now we're down another rabbit hole. What is it? Is it flat? Is it spherical? Is it a simulation? Who knows? But you know what? A lovely thing now, I think, is just to have everything in the I don't know bucket. People are the biggest problem, I think, over the past few years has been division and hostility between factions and whatever, left, right, red, blue, all this sort of thing, anti-vaxxer, COVID enthusiast, all these sort of things. There's been this terrible division, and it's the same. It's the same with everything. So yeah, I just think that to have the ability to say it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. There was a beautiful meme a little while ago during all this nonsense, and it was a guy being loaded into an ambulance, and it said "man in critical condition" after somebody had a slightly different opinion. I love it. I mean, a load of my friends have different opinions, and the open-minded ones you just stay friends with. It doesn't matter if they have a different opinion, because as somebody once said, we're sense organs of the infinite rather than actual individuals. And everybody is processing the universe in the way that they're supposed to be processing it. And perhaps if we're all one and we're all just different sense organs, but how the other sense organ is processing it is beautiful. It's like an eye arguing with an ear. The ear goes, the world is just sound. And the eye's going, no, it's just light. And they're really arguing about this. Why? It's just ridiculous. So people see things slightly differently. So what? What's the point of arguing about it? It's perfect what they're thinking, because they're all little sections of this computer that's trying to figure itself out. So everything's perfect. I think, again, it's coming up with all these guru quotes today, but they were quite cool, some of them. Somebody once asked Maharishi, what is life about, whatever, and if everything's perfect, and exactly as it should be, then why are you trying to change the world and teach everybody to meditate and be happy? And he went, well, that's perfect as well. And it is, it's all the same part of stuff, isn't it? You just go with your desires and just do what you want, And I think that's another point, actually, that religion and spirituality, that desires are evil. What else have we got apart from desires that take us towards our dharma? What we're supposed to be doing in life, our life path. We're given desires so that we can go and do what we're supposed to do in this lifetime. And you're right, if you go against those desires, and then people who have jobs that they hate, and they'll do that for decades just to earn some money for retirement. And then when they get to retirement, they've got nothing in their lives. So they die a couple of years after retirement. It happens so often because they got nothing that they had identified with their whole life apart from their job, which they hated. And so this is how it becomes a hell planet. When you aren't just open and go with your desires and your ancestral heritage. And we're so disconnected from that at the moment. We can go and look at tribes, we can go and look at how we used to live, and we can get all that stuff right. But if we don't follow desires, we're really sort of denying our essential nature and creating that hell. And so many people do. It's virtuous to do something you don't want to do. Work really hard, do this, do that. All these things that are drilled into us causes a lot of trauma.
What they say? No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Shall we put this one in a bin?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, definitely. Yeah, it's another one of those mantras that screw us over, definitely. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add? I think it was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for bringing these things out. I love talking about this stuff. I feel really sort of energized today from having been able to talk about that sort of thing, because usually I don't. People get me on podcasts to talk about you know, how much ribeye steak you should be eating and how few vegetables. So it's really nice to look into those kind of things, which are much more interesting, really, aren't they?
Well,
And yeah, what do I want to say? What in closing, I don't know. Just, you know, my advice for anybody, you know, I was on Ahmad Malik's show recently, and he always asks at the end of the show, if you were 150 years old, you've lived a beautiful life, you're just going to pass away easily in the next couple of days, your relatives are all gathered around you, what would be your advice to them? And I thought, oh no, you know, what am I going to say? And I think what I said was that, you know, really try to be in the present, because the future is just a whole tangle of uncertainties. We don't know what's going to happen. And the past is gone, and it's caused us stresses. And if we can unwind that, the more and more that we can be just in the present and get out of that fight or flight mode, because we're not designed for it. We're designed to have that fight or flight when we're chasing an animal, or when an animal's chasing us, or something like that, or somebody's fighting with us, and then it's supposed to stop. We're not designed to be worried about mortgages, this and that, you know, whether the sky's going to fall on our heads, you know, or whatever it is that we're freaked out about all the time. So if we can just come back to the present again, just breathe, you know, go and contact. Yeah, go and contact Anne, get into HeartMath, get into her groups and understand how to do this. It's so good for defusing that kind of panic that keeps us sick and keeps us in a hell planet, keeps us frightened of other people, all the negative things that can possibly happen kind of stem from not realizing our essential nature, and not living in the present, and holding resentments and having worries, and that is our major problem. So if you can find a way out of that cycle of panic and fear, you know, and live in love, that's the way.
we have to change our story. They're
Mm,
all stories anyway.
yeah.
We are amazing storyteller. All we need is just, you don't like this story? If you ask my sister and I how we've been brought up, you got two different stories.
Yeah.
And you can go and do that with everybody. Everybody, have you ever been to a multiplex cinema?
Mm,
Did you go and see screen number one? Today we have The Life of Phil. You get in there, you think this is really interesting. So you walk in and you realize, ah, this is me and this is my life. And you watch for a little bit, and effectively it's all exactly according to the way you feel, you think, you, etc. It's you. Then you walk out and you go screen number two, and that's the story of your mom. And that's the way she presents herself to the world. And then how she sees you. And you hear say, I dare she sees me like that, honestly. And you see that the way she sees herself is not the way you see her. And the way she sees you is not the way. Shall we continue to all the screens with your kids, with all your family, with your friends? And that's when we realize how many stories exist in the world. And this is why maybe nobody should kind of take personally what anybody else would think, because what's their story?
yeah, exactly. I can't add to that. That's perfectly said. Yeah.
So, my darling, will you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, well, you know, there's, I think philescott.com points to pretty much everything. I'll send you my link tree as well. My Substack, which I'm getting into, I think it's a lovely platform. It's not censored, and that's philescott.substack.com. And there, I also do couple of calls a week for people who are paid subscribers, and you know, they can come along and talk about their autoimmunity or metabolic things or stuff like this. You know, it's great to have that kind of tribe. Big Fat Challenge and whatever that's still there that you can subscribe to, which has a huge wealth of information. My YouTube channel and stuff. I'll send that to you and you can put it underneath. But listen, I would also love to put this on my channel. So please say where people can get you, because we're both recording it this time. And where can people find you, Anne? And
People can find me on LinkedIn. I will put the link below on my website, which is anneventura.net, which is ANNEVENTURA.net. And well, basically, that's what I do mainly, because this is not my favorite thing in the world. I do like the YouTube video. I really enjoy conversation, but I'm not, you know, I do what I want to do. And then personally, if you want to know, if the mobile phone didn't exist, it wouldn't make me cry for a minute. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. How did we ever get by without them, mate?
Anyway, thank you so much, Phil. It's such a pleasure. And I wish you all the best of luck for your retreat in Spain in October, I believe.
Yes.
Put that below as well, if you send me the link.
I will do. We've only got a couple of rooms left, I think, but we've also got one called the Ancestral Health Festival in August in the Rainford Junction near here in the northwest of England, and that's going to be great. We've got all sorts of wonderful speakers, including Sarah Pugh, who I was talking about earlier on, talking about the heart, and you know,
I would love to. I would love to get in contact with her, actually.
Yeah. I can easily hook you up. Yeah, she's lovely. She really is. Very funny too. And yeah, she's great. But yeah, we've got that festival and you can find that on my stuff as well. So thank you so much for
Thank you
inviting me
so
on.
much.
Always a pleasure.
Au revoir.